This video is brought to you by Wicket Cricket Manager. If you're enjoying these live chats, our main channel has even more World Cup videos looking at the greatest performances, the quirkiest stats, and the epic tales of World Cup cricket. This show was made by HCLTech, a company that believes in partnership so much you can read their name on the Australian shirt. This show leans in hard on data and technology, so we are proud to work with HCLTech, leaders in their field. Morning everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Scoreboard. Netherlands won the toss and they did a deal with the devil to get Max O'Dowd to actually make some runs. Unfortunately, that deal, it would turn out, would be something that they'd have to pay for with 4 runouts. And so any advantage that they had from actually getting runs in their top order completely disappeared later on. Eventually, their batting would officially start when they lost 5 wickets. But unfortunately, this time they only added 74 runs for the last 5. A disappointment for them in this tournament, although still more than fine. Mohammad Nabi was the best of the non-runouts as Afghanistan went for defensive spin bowling and it worked very, very well. Netherlands got out Gobars early, but really it was another comfortable chase. But what, I don't know. Let's just be a little bit punchy, a little bit hot takey. The second best chasing team in this World Cup. Let's just put them there. Anyway, let us check the tape. We've got heaps to get through today. Actually, me and Shah found a lot of fascinating stuff to have a look at. So let's see what we have today. Afghanistan have the second best economy rate for all teams in this World Cup. India being the first is obviously not a surprise because no one can actually stay in against them. But Afghanistan have now won 3 games while chasing, and they restrict opponents to par or below totals, and then their batters chase it essentially like Jonathan Trott, the Trott spot. Their spinners have not actually picked up a lot of wickets, but when you have a look here, you can see that 2 of their spinners are in the top 5 most economical in this tournament so far. So obviously Nabi has been almost impossible to hit off the square at all. Bowled very well again today. He talked about it afterwards of the subtle things that he does as a spinner are very, very good. So he sometimes looks more like a club spinner or a part-time spinner, but he's very good at changing the lengths, changing the lines, changing the speeds. He doesn't have a ball that goes the other way, but he's just constantly toying with what he's doing. Makes it very hard to line up. And then Rashid Khan is also very good. And some of in the games they've won, Mujib has obviously been a very good bowler as well. And one of the reasons that we want to point out this was, well, just go back to the Indian point for a moment here. So Afghanistan have, I would say they're the best defensive bowling team in this tournament. That's not to say that obviously India has a much better economy. But what I mean is, India are still trying to get wickets. And Afghanistan have really decided to lean all in. If you have a look at the economy compared to the average, they haven't taken a lot of wickets, but they have a very good economy. Whereas most of the other teams in this tournament have a decent average with a decent economy, or a decent average with a poor economy in some cases, like South Africa springs to mind there. And then you've got the teams who are not bowling very well at all. So I do think that Afghanistan is the most defensive-minded of all the bowling units here, and it's worked pretty well for them in what is a tournament where bowling defensive hasn't worked that well at other times for other teams. And we're talking about this, of course, because of this tweet as much as anything, but the what came about because of this tweet. So Engelbrett was 13 of 36, and the way he was batting was so slow that Netherlands had to take a lot of risks with their running between wickets. And of course, that didn't work. We'll get to that in a moment. And so a lot of those dot balls, of course, came about from the Afghanistani spinners just putting the ball in the right area and putting pressure on the Netherlands. We know the Netherlands is not a particularly good batting team when it comes to spin. Perhaps their best player for facing spin was Scott Edwards. We'll show what happened to him in a little while. Not ideal for him. But just a really good bowling effort and then fielding effort. So generally, we start with the winning teams first and we work our way down. We're going to put the Netherlands runouts up here because they're also a story of what Afghanistan did very well, even if maybe the stories are a little bit more about, the individual bits are a little bit more about what happened for the Dutch. But so this is Max O'Dowd, who you can see has actually made some runs here. He plays a little paddle sweep down to fine leg, and instantly he wants to, We don't get the full footage of him running there. And you can see just run out just a little bit short. But do we get a better angle of this? I'm just trying to see. I thought I'd seen another angle of this. Yeah, so you can see he's given it the full dive, done everything he can, and ended up an inch short. I think it's fair in this particular situation to say that he thought there were two there, and he went quite hard for it. But what he's been undone by here is two things. One is, of course, when he's hit that, he hasn't really factored in that it's going to be going to the right hand of the fielder. And that also that the fielder's going to get a good view of the stumps. This is a really clean pickup. It's a really fast release and then a deadly accurate throw. So as Matt, all-round cricketer, we've talked about him, can bat, can bowl, a very good athlete as well, still learning the game in many ways. But that's a fantastic run out. You could make an argument that they shouldn't have pushed for that, but he is an inch short on what is a fantastic effort. All things considered, I don't think this one is the worst, but unfortunately for them, this one obviously completely opens up everything that comes after it. So this is Engelbrecht. This is not good. This is not good in a few different ways. So let's just go back to here. It's worth having a look. Oh, if I do, oh, now I've got the wrong one. Shit's going to hell here. Just before he plays that shot, it's worth having a look at this strike rate, right? So he's got 12 off 31. That was what we were talking about at the top and the pressure, right? He's desperate to get off. He's already faced, there's already been a dot ball. So he hasn't faced, but there's already been a dot ball and it's over. Look at Nabi's figures. None for 8 after 3.2. They're really putting the squeeze on here. So he comes down the wicket and he wants to hit this. And this is, I'll show you the full thing in a minute because there's a couple of really interesting parts of this run out. But essentially, this is what happens. You see this with kids and with tail-enders. Sometimes they come down the wicket, they play a very, very good shot, and then they run afterwards because they've hit such a good shot. How could someone possibly stop it, right? And if you play club cricket, you will this trend always goes through. Junior cricket is hilarious. You know, the best shot that a kid will ever play will probably be the one that runs him or he's made out. Anyway, so he comes down the wicket and he smashes this, but he smashes it straight to Rashid Khan's right hand, and Colin Ackerman is run out at the non-striker's end. We get a better view of this one from here. So you can see straight away, he's just following through there. And because he's so far down, he also thinks that if it comes at his end, he'll be fine, right? The problem is, of course, you can see from Nabi's face, that ball is going to the other end. But there's something else here that's worth looking at. Let's see if I can bring it up for you. All right, is that Ackerman keeps looking back. Now, I'm not a sprinting coach. I wouldn't pretend to be, but I would assume that you're much better off in this sort of situation to be just deciding to run as hard as you can and try and get to the other end with all your forward momentum. I would think constantly looking back over your shoulders is not ideal here, but it is certainly not his fault. I think we don't get the full view. We might get it on the big one. Let me see if I can see it for you here. So you do just see there the tiniest bit of Ackerman looking back. Let's have a look if we can see it on the wider camera for you. Just there. Ackerman actually gets a really good view of this. And he should have instantly just said to Engelbrecht, there's no run. It's important to say, I've pointed out 2 mistakes of Ackerman here. However, this was not Ackerman's fault. This is completely Engelbrecht's fault. He's not scoring very well. He's come down the wicket. He feels like he's hit a good shot. It's gone straight to the fielder, but he thinks he's halfway down the wicket. He'll be fine. But he has forgotten that the other guy who is, have a look, hasn't really left his crease much at all. But even if he did, I think you'll see from the run out, he was absolutely nowhere near it. The other mistake, of course, here is that Engelbrecht hit it. Not only did it hit it hard, which meant that it went to Rashid Khan quicker, it also hit it almost directly to Rashid Khan's right hand. Rashid Khan, much better athlete now than he was when he first started in cricket. He's worked on his fitness quite a bit. And this is just good fielding right above the bails. Doesn't hit the stumps, but, you know, he hasn't done much wrong here. And Ackerman is out by, a fair distance. Even if Ackerman does everything right here, other than the original no call, he still might have been run out. Anyway, let's have a look at another one. This is the only one what I would say that is, I don't want to say a touch of fluke about it, but Scott Edwards hasn't done a lot wrong here, other than the fact that he probably should have known where the ball was before he left his crease. Ikram does a great job of just being alert, I think, as much as anything here. this goes down as a run out, but it's not that far off being a stumping as well. You can see he plays his normal shot, the sweep shot. It hits his pad, and he thinks it's run down to short third. He doesn't massively run off. He just takes that half a step before he realizes the ball might not have gone as far as he wanted. The reason that this one, of course, is so important in this situation, brilliantly quick break run as well, is because it was Edwards and it was first ball, and they'd got a good start. This is really, Edwards has had to come in when they haven't had many good starts. 92 for 3. Even if he makes a 40 at this stage, it would have really extended their batting quite a bit. And unfortunately for him, he goes straight off. And yeah, just tiny little error, half an error really from him. He's not even that far out if you have a look there. He gave it a good effort to get back, but no good. And Ikram being carried. Like, what I love about this is like the end of an American sports movie, right? Like, you could zoom in on his face now. Is it Rudy? Is that the film I'm thinking of? Anyway. And last one here. This is roll off, essentially getting Engelbrecht back. It's very similar to the original run out that we saw. Sorry, the second run out that we saw, where Roloff hits this almost exactly to, you see it in the field here. They've got two fielders here. And I think this fielder at short mid wicket, sort of almost like a short mid on, very clever. We saw both teams try some interesting fields today, by the way. Sadly, the cameras didn't always show it enough. But I think this combination of the two fielders there just put Roloff off a little bit more. And then you can see, of course, I just had a look at this. You see the umpire. Umpire's ready for this, man. Look at this. Action position for the run out. Anyway, but you see, comes in. Again, it's easy enough for the fielder to get that on the right-hand side of the body and just gets the run out. And Engelbrecht is basically run out exactly the way that he ran out Ackerman before, by just hitting the ball straight to a fielder and taking off. Again, if you want, you can see that Van der Merwe is, where are we here? Actually, I'll bring this back slightly for you to here. Yeah, so you can see again, Van der Merwe is 2 off 7. So that pressure is back on. There's already been 2 dots in that over as well. So again, just excellent work by Afghanistan. And it's excellent work in terms of, there was 2 runouts there where I think their fielders did outstanding work. 2 other runouts there where you would hope most international cricketers would have a fair chance of getting the run out. But they were alert, they were fit, they were quick. We haven't always seen this from Afghanistan field teams in the field. Plus, they built that pressure, right? Their bowling, their fielding plans, as we saw there, everything built that pressure. So they should be really happy with that. I know that quite often teams are almost happier when they get the run out because it's a collection of everyone being involved. People being alert and everything else. It's not just someone running in and bowling a great delivery. Anyway, not ideal from Netherlands there. But let's get to Afghanistan's batting. This is very fascinating. So they're now taking the piss with these chases, right? This one was easy enough, but they went out of their way again to make it look very comfortable. If Roloff hadn't have got a drag on wicket from a pretty innocuous ball outside off stump, I think Afghanistan would have made this even easier. This is teams in the second innings chasing in this World Cup so far. You got tier 1, a pretty clear tier 2 over here, right? Like, there's a big difference with the tiers and everything that is going on. Like, it's very, very clear, having a look at that at the moment as we fix our fonts live on camera. That's what we do here, eh? That's the kind of show that you want, fixing fonts. Afghanistan. Anyway, awesome. We've lost the last letter. I don't know what's going on with this template at the moment. But anyway, but you could see definitely first tier, just hanging on there with New Zealand and Pakistan. A long way from India. But magnificent effort from them to even be in this conversation, right? They're averaging almost 50 when they're batting batting second per wicket. I can't think of any time in their history where I would think of this as a team who should be averaging around 50. Even when they played well, their wickets usually come a lot quicker. I love how it's happened again. I promise you, this was all fine before we went live to air. Anyway, this is how much each team averages batting second compared to first. So, pour one out for our homies from South Africa for a moment. That is absolutely hilarious. But anyway, you can see, again, they're in the tier 1. This time, they're in the top 3 teams, and then there's a bit of a drop-off a little bit more to New Zealand and Sri Lanka here. Now, part of the reason they're doing so well in this particular metric is because I think per wicket. Oh, did I do the wrong one then? It's all going now. I'll get back to the right one. I think per wicket, they're averaging about 25 in the first innings and 47 in the second. So part of this is obviously inflated by how bad they have played so far in that first innings. But their composure under pressure has just been outstanding. I honestly thought in this chase, the Dutch would find a way to put pressure on them a couple of times. Never really happened. Maybe around that new ball period and then maybe around that second wicket, Afghanistan didn't look as fluent. But I'm not sure they ever felt like they were under pressure in this one as well. But yeah, excellent work from them. And I just want to get onto the batting in total. So this is all the this is their top 5 run scorers in this tournament. And you can see from Ibrahim Zadran all the way to Hachimullah, right? That top 5 have all scored roughly the same amount of runs, right? There's slight differences here all the way through, but more or less, you could certainly make the claim that all these players have chipped in and done very, very well at different times. And again, sometimes when a team does well at a tournament like this and they're a bit surprising, they're riding on the back of maybe 1 or maybe 2 players who are just being exceptional. This is what you want. This is the kind of split you would like, right? Like Ikram Alikeel made runs in one game. He's at 5%, but that's because he hasn't had to bat in a couple of the other games that he's played in as well. I don't think he's batted in every single game. Well, certainly didn't bat today, did he? Yeah. So, you know, that's a perfect situation that they are in. And so this is a really, really good even split. And this has been the most optimistic that this is more of a strength rather than a fluke. I think we talked about it in their other game as well, when we looked at their runs coming into the tournament, they were also averaging about the same amount of runs per wicket as they are now. So they are playing certainly a slightly different style under Jonathan Trott. More defensive. No, who in the world is going to be shocked at that? It is pretty funny, isn't it, that Jonathan Trott, who's blamed for all of England's faults for so many years, despite having still one of the best batting averages in ODI cricket, he was blamed for all their faults, and yet England have gone all in on the attacking, and in this particular World Cup, it's gone completely the other way. It's hilarious. Anyway, again, very, very good from them. And I just want to talk about Rahmat Shah as well. So 2019, I thought he was the sort of player in that tournament that at his best, you could hope for an average of around 35, probably strike rate around 75, 80. But that's the kind of player that they needed at that time. He's been much better in this tournament. He's never going to be a fast striker. It's a little bit icky watching him play white ball cricket because it's not for him, right? He's a proper, elegant, stylish batter. Never plays in grammatically incorrect shot, right? Like everything is pretty much textbook. In fact, we'll have a look at him versus spin. You probably would have want this cluster maybe more in this area, but this is exactly how you want to be playing spin. If you're not very good at playing spin, you want to go back as far as possible. He takes it all the way back. He was playing balls that were pitched on a full length and still playing them off the back foot because he goes so deep in his crease. Then he can come down and he gets to a lot of balls here as well that are slightly over pitched because he's gone so far back. So he's essentially, the danger zone is the prod against the spinners, right? You want to come forward, especially this part here. You want to use your feet, or you want to go all the way back. And he's really only got this one ball here, which again, he still would have been off his back foot here and fairly comfortable. But he's just a master of, if you want to teach someone to bat, as I said before, grammatically correct, he is absolutely perfect at that, and was fantastic again today. I thought it was worth talking about the toss a little bit. I think it's getting more and more clear that teams have no idea what to do in this World Cup when they win the toss. Obviously, the dew is playing a huge amount. It's been inconsistent dew, I suppose, is the best way of putting it. And so teams don't really know which way the dew is going to affect their game, right? So, with that in mind, it does cause some issues. If we remember back to the World T20 in Dubai, when winning the toss had such a huge impact, and now losing the toss is what is having the best impact. So if we go through the numbers here, so this is how teams go when they win the toss in this tournament. It's not a lot of wins, is it? It's a remarkable record. And my first thought looking at this was, should you just try and lose the toss and let the opposition stuff up the game from there for you? But then I thought, is India warped these numbers at all? So this is it without India in it. And you can see it's almost identical ratio. So no, India playing has not changed that ratio at all. Your best option in this tournament so far is losing the toss, waiting for the opposition to make a mistake. And it got a little bit weirder because I wanted to look at the last decade of ODIs inside of India. And they've obviously been a fantastic one-day team during that time. They won the Champions Trophy in 2013. They made the semifinals of the World Cup in 2015 and 2019 and made the final in 2017. So that we know they've been a good ODI side, plus, bilaterals, they've been very good as well. And yet when teams playing against them at home, you can actually see here that the teams have actually won more matches when winning the toss against India in bilaterals in India than anyone else. So this is playing inside of India in the last decade, and this is the win-loss ratio of winning the toss this World Cup. So you literally would be better off to play India anytime over the last decade and win the toss than you would be to win the toss in this World Cup. Now, the reason I don't like to talk about tosses a lot is because it is a little bit confusing. And I think generally what happens is we get a little bit, when a team loses really badly and they've won the toss, we blame the toss sometimes for what should have just been they batted like shit, they dropped catches, they ran themselves out. Hello, Dutch. But I think it's also fair to say, actually, I'll leave that up for a sec. But I also think it's fair to say that England, South Africa, Sri Lanka, South Africa, New Zealand, South Africa, Netherlands, England, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, India. There's been quite a few, and you could probably, if you want to put more games in the comments, feel free, because I might end up having to do a full video on this because it's a fascinating thing. But I think it is very fair to say at the moment that we've seen a lot of teams who have made decisions at the toss that have just gone horribly wrong for them, whether it's just that they've played crap cricket or whether the dew hasn't affected the game the way they thought it would. All those things are relevant. This is at this World Cup, winning the toss and batting second. So you could see here a very, very poor ratio so far. And I think this is a lot to do. We've seen teams do this the majority of the time. A lot of this, I think, is about the dew and, worrying about everything else. But the thing is that if it is about the dew, then the dew hasn't come in as much as people. So at this stage, you could almost bet against it. But clearly, that is not working for teams at the moment. But the interesting thing is that when teams have won the toss and batted first, the pattern is pretty much the same again, right? It's still teams losing quite a bit. So the pattern should be in one direction if it's just the dew thing. But it seems to me that it's a lot more random. And I know people will take a lot out of this and everything else. But when I've looked at the numbers, and I do need to look at them slightly more, but when I have looked at the numbers, I actually don't know what to tell you about the toss, which is probably why we haven't covered it so far on this. But I also wanted to wait for, it to even out a little bit more. It has not evened out. We just got, let's have a look. Let's just talk about Netherlands in the power play. So today, they scored at just over a run a ball. And before today, they were scoring at less than 4 runs and over. And that tells you a lot about just the fact that Max O'Dowd stayed in. Also, it looked like they had a slightly stronger intent than we've seen sometimes from the Dutch. I think especially when they started to lose early on, they did get to a point where they were playing within themselves and still losing wickets. And I think maybe they just had a team chat. They obviously changed. Vikram was out. They used Wesley Barisi today, who still failed. And Ackerman and O'Dowd were the ones who actually scored the runs. I think I talked about this on this channel recently. I thought Logan Van Beek might have been an option just to send him up the top and see how he goes. He seems to be able to do every other job, although they did send him up the order today and it didn't work. So maybe I was shit out of luck there. But they did get off to a good start, which I think makes this game even more disappointing for them because that 2 of their wins have come when they haven't got a good start. This is Afghanistan bowling in the power play. And you can see they have been fantastic at not going for any runs. So it kind of flipped a little bit today. I think it might have been Mohammad Nabi who talked about how they hadn't bowled particularly well. Faruqi went for runs as well, so they fought themselves back pretty well, all things considered. Although 4 runouts will do that for you. All right. So another thing, we've seen this in the comments as well, that the toss and the batting World Cup things were two things that we'd seen a lot in the comments, and people have been asking me about a lot so far. And my big question is it a batting World Cup? Because it started like it was a batting World Cup, but we've had a lot of games when no one's made any runs as well. So certainly at least one side hasn't made runs. So this is the blue is this World Cup, and the yellow is the 2019 cycle, right? So if it was a batting World Cup, and certainly a batting dominant World Cup, you would expect this blue line to be a lot higher than this yellow line, right? But you can see that between the cycle, what you've got is there's a slight bump there, which is fair. And certainly teams are averaging a couple of extra, well, not even a couple, but a tiny bit more per wicket than they were before the World Cup. And you can see, again, a tiny bump with the runs per over. But I would suggest that this is not really, makes it a batting World Cup. It might mean that it's not a bowling World Cup, but it's around, it kind of feels in the middle looking at these numbers. We've got a few games to go. These could change massively. Of course, between now and the end, there's still some more games at Bengaluru, right? Yeah, pretty sure that's right. So, things could change. Australia could make 500 against Afghanistan, or Afghanistan could make 500. Well, they're not going to make 500, are they? But you know what I mean. Afghanistan could bowl Australia out for 112. Things could change. But at the moment in this World Cup, and we just want to look at some of the other World Cups as well. So this is 2019. So you can see 2019, a little bit more clear here that this was a bowling World Cup, that the averages actually comes down a little bit here. Not as much for the runs per wicket, but I think it's fair to say that would suggest that 2019 was a bowling World Cup. Again, what you would expect in England, I think, is fair to say. And then we've got 2015 World Cup. This is what a batting World Cup looks like. So when I looked up the stats early on, and this is when everyone was making 100 every game, the 2015 World Cup was still towering above this World Cup. And I think what it does tell you is that was definitely one where we saw the bat dominate the ball to a large extent, pretty much all the way through, outside of a couple of bowlers who did fantastic, like Shami and Stark. I think there was another one, but the majority of the bowlers just went for runs. And you can see, again, decent bump in runs per over. If we were to take away this part of the graph, but we put them all together, so it's a bit easier for you to see them all in one go. But this bump, I think, would be even more noticeable. But definitely, that was a batting World Cup. Then we got 2011. And you can see that was a bowling World Cup. And of course, that was the last one in India, which I thought was very, very fascinating. Again, not much in it, but I'd say slightly towards bowling, in the same way that this one might be slightly towards batting. But interesting enough, I'm not sure I would have expected that going in. You see runs per over fairly similar there. And this is 2007, which again was another bowling World Cup when you look at the cycle compared to the actual averages. I think the runs per over is slightly higher in the World Cup, but obviously in order to do that, that was the case. So just wanted to show that there have been, certainly when you go back through this, where are we? That isn't much of a gap. If we if you just focus on the averages here, that in 2023, we haven't had much of a gap, but you could say, if anything, it's slightly a batting World Cup, but I'm not sure I'd put too much into these numbers. Whereas 2019, I think that's a fairly substantial drop. 2015, definitely a batting World Cup. And then you got 2011 is a bit more like this year, but slightly towards the bowlers. And then 2007 again, slightly towards the bowlers. I think those two are probably slightly more bowling World Cups. But we just wanted to put that out because so many people have been putting it in the comments and everything else. We might actually try and make a proper video on these things as well and have a look. There's a few other metrics that it's worth looking at. I think I might have done this early in the tournament, but hundreds per game is a really interesting thing of looking at as well. And all these World Cups are slightly different. If you look at 2007, for instance, we had a couple of teams who were of weaker quality make it to the major group, while a couple of stronger teams didn't. And then 2019 and 2020 and 2023, we haven't had as many weaker teams even in the World Cup. So there are lots of different things to factor in that we might not be able to get to all the details of. But I think that gives you an idea of what at least a batting World Cup or a bowling World Cup should look like. Now, we're going to get to some. There was a moment, if you're watching this game, which was absolutely hilarious because they kept showing the same thing over and over again, which was Sakib. Oh God, I keep forgetting his name. Zulfikar. Sakib Zulfikar. I've actually written about him in the last couple of days. I don't know how I could forget about him, but and one of the reasons I thought this was really interesting is because he essentially bowled a ball that kind of broke the commentator's brain. But let's just start with his bowling action because it is weird as hell. You can see here. Let me try and pause this right at the moment I want to. All right. He bowls with no front arm. So that front arm, even a weak front arm would be here, and a strong front arm might be up here. He barely, it's barely even involved his front arm. It's like one half of his body is a T-Rex, right? That front arm is doing absolutely nothing. But part of the reason he's bowling with no front arm, if we just move slightly forward, is that he's bowling off the wrong foot. So instead of planting his back foot and then pushing through the crease like a normal bowler would, he's actually, as his back foot lands, he starts to bowl. And it's a really weird action. I've had friends who've bowled with this action before. I had a friend who had, where they used to play cricket at his school, there was like this weird step. And there was like a bunch of them who learned to play cricket in that one place who all bowled off the wrong foot. It was fascinating, nature versus nurture cricket thing for me. But anyway, what I want to point out is he's in the middle of his delivery stride, but his foot is nowhere near the ground here. And you can see that as the ball comes over, his foot is just starting to touch the ground. So there, you can see his foot touches the ground and the ball comes out. Now, why we're looking at all this is because at one stage he was called for a no ball, and the commentators weren't exactly sure on the law. Neither was I. I had to talk to my man Johnny Singer, who used to help the MCC. He might still help the MCC with the laws, actually. I'm not sure. Anyway, because I wasn't sure as well, but I was pretty sure that, let's say his foot hadn't quite touched the ground here and this ball left his hand. That's not quite what happens. I think what happens here is his foot has just touched the ground as the ball is leaving his fingers, right? But let's say that was not the case and his foot was in the air. They were saying that they weren't sure if that should be a no ball or not. And I thought that didn't make any sense. And I'll tell you why it doesn't make any sense. Because if we changed where he was in this crease and we had his back foot here, right, and his front foot was over here, and his front foot didn't land when he delivered that ball, that would mean he would get a 2-meter advantage over any bowlers with normal bowling actions. So we'd only be encouraging people to have this weird Mike Proctor bowling off the wrong foot kind of bowling action, right? But the reason, and I'll try and quote Johnny as best I can, but when you look at the laws, it defines the delivery stride as the step in which there is a delivery swing. So once his back foot is down and he starts to actually deliver the ball, that is his delivery stride, right? And at that point, the delivery swing is obviously the action in which the ball is released, right? So as long as the ball is delivered during that stride, if he oversteps, it doesn't matter if his foot is actually planted down before the ball comes out of his hand or not, that would still be a no ball. And it's a really weird little one. And I'm sure that if there was an international bowler who had this, international teams might be trying to see if they could change it. Because as I said, you could move where he is on the crease and get a huge advantage from this. But I think that law is fairly well worded at the moment. Anyway, they must have shown this replay about 25 times. I was in heaven at the nerdy moments. I think it was Harsha and maybe Pommy was on as well. Anyway, talking about nerdy stuff. So I saw someone do this on the NBA recently, where they went to one of the AI generators, image generators, and they asked them to redesign team shirts. And I was like, oh, we should be doing this for like every team in this World Cup, right? I got some random ones back. I did Sri Lanka to start with because I thought they had the coolest shirt designs. And then I went with the Netherlands here. It's a bit interesting, the pattern here, but these are two really good shirts, right? This looks like a variation on one of the Dutch shirts that we've seen before. And this is, again, a variation on an Afghanistani shirt, but it's taken it to a whole new level. Like, big fan of both these shirts, but I got some other options as well. Afghanistan in red. I can't remember ever seeing them play in red. I know I've got an Afghanistan shirt I was given by one of the staff at one stage, which was a gray color. So I remember they used to play in gray, but I like this red. I also like this black and orange ensemble for the Dutch team as well. So well done to AI for for helping that. So I'll keep doing it all the way through with all the games to see what sort of weirdness AI can come up with the cricket shirts. I also like this number, right? I don't know if anyone would ever go with this, but I really, really like the way that number looks for a player who's got 2 numbers on the back of their shirt. Would suggest that other teams should look into that. That's the end of the scoreboard part of the show. But if you've got a super chat that you're desperate for me to answer, please get one through. But honestly, even just normal chats as well. I'll play a quick break here, and then after the break, we'll get to your questions. You're watching the Scoreboard with Jared Kimball.
I know that you think you could run your favourite cricket team better than those who do, but no one is going to let you do that. So why not try Wicket Cricket Manager to satisfy that urge? Pick your nation, pick your league, pick your players, and yell at them when they do poorly. You can find it in the links below or by searching for Wicket Cricket Manager in your app store today.
If you're enjoying these live chats, our main channel has even more World Cup videos looking at the greatest performances, the quirkiest stats, and the epic tales of World Cup cricket. Cricket is about partnerships, and this show was made in partnership with HCLTech. Yeah, the company you see on the Australian shirts. Supercharge your technology with them today. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. In the comments, as I said, I've taken a bunch from the comments already, but if you're desperate for me to answer something, please put it in a super chat. It just automatically springs up. So I can't even ignore you if I want, unless it's right at the end of the show, and then you should have luck. Vishant says, is Rashid Khan not getting wickets because teams are playing too defensively against him? Well, he's got a low economy, and generally those things can do it. I think also if you're playing against Afghanistan, he is probably, even though he hasn't been at his best form, I think he is seen as still the biggest threat, right? So it probably makes sense that teams are going to be a little bit more defensive against him, chip him around a little bit. But it's a very different format from T20 cricket, where you have to attack and take risks against him, and you don't have to do that in one-day cricket. I don't mind him having a low economy in one-day cricket without getting millions of wickets, because it suits the way they're playing at the moment. And eventually, you're still going to have to try and score off someone. So the wickets might come for other bowlers as well. But yeah, it's different. It's just different the way you bat it against him. And I've talked about that a lot. The milking compared to trying to hit him. He's very hard to hit. He's not always that hard to milk. It's just that milking him at 7 runs and over in a T20 game doesn't really help you, right? Whereas scoring around 7 or 8 runs and over in a one-day game is huge. But I do believe he's bowling better now than he was at the start of the tournament. Again, he's another player who hasn't played a lot of one-day cricket, right? And also, quite often when he plays one-day cricket against people who can't play him. So for him, it's a different challenge almost entirely to what he is used to playing in T20 cricket when people are trying to hit him for 4 and 6 against the best players in the world a lot of the time. And then in one-day cricket when people are trying to milk him and looking to attack him not even attack, but looking to play him in a different way. Ishan says, hope he is a cricket fan that Pakistan and England win their respective games tomorrow, hence giving the last week of the group stage plenty to look out for. Look, someone was really upset with me yesterday going, you said that they're all going to be 19 dead rubbers. I was obviously making a bit of a joke, and also a very bad song, because even England still have a percentage chance and have for a long time of being able to qualify, right? The point being that the ICC put in place what they knew was a flawed structure 2 World Cups in a row. They marginally got away with it because of what happened with Pakistan in the last tournament. They may not get away with it this time. But yes, Afghanistan can still do some damage. Pakistan are not that far away. England can rock the tournament a little bit. So from that perspective, it's actually what's the best way of putting it? I think from that perspective, it makes it still means the original decision was flawed because it was a stupid concept that they shouldn't have gone with again. But they might get away with it if it's a good week. But if it's a bad week, it's just going to be another week of everyone moaning about the ICC. Ishan says, the Aussies have an advantage over Afghanistan are playing them in Mumbai. Yeah, I think they do. I think, though, if I'm Afghanistan, I might still just play the extra spinner. And just, I don't know. If I was working for them, Trotty hasn't sent me a WhatsApp. Trotty sends me a WhatsApp and says, Jared, what do we do? I'd be like, Trotty, just play all your spinners because you're probably not going to beat them with pace, right? And if the ball comes onto the bat against quick bowlers, even if they're bowling well, they might still go. Just make them try and do it against spin all the way through. We know Mujeeb's going to bowl early on. It does mean that Omarzai is probably going to have to bowl at the death. It's not ideal, but it's risky. And if you're a team like Afghanistan, I'll come to it because I think there's a question about this in a little bit. But if you're a team like Afghanistan who has played defensively so far, perhaps you just go with a normal lineup. But net run rate isn't particularly good. Wins is what's going to give them the most chance of making this the semi-finals. I would take a risk and just go, let's just push all of our chips in and see how we go. I don't expect them to do that, but then again, the surface might also suggest that. Ari Hunt says, is there a case to make that support bowlers help in some way to make a fabulous bowler like Shami? Who do you think was a support bowler for McGrath or Stark, and especially in big tournaments? Well, McGrath kind of didn't need a support bowler because he's McGrath's more like Bumrah in that he can keep the runs down and take wickets. And to be fair, McGrath's almost more like a combination of Shami and Bumrah. Like, he's so much better than other one-day bowlers when it comes to taking wickets. So when I looked up the best bowling averages in the power play, we only had McGrath from 2000 onwards, and he'd bowled 4,000 balls in the power play and had a bowling average of like 18.4. Truly remarkable that number is still, unless Shami has a brilliant career, no bowler will probably ever break that. He's just a different beast, McGrath. So he was he could do it on his own. But having said that, Brett Lee has a very similar record to Shami. He's not quite as good as Shami. Although maybe if you look at it generationally, might be on a very similar kind of trajectory where Brett Lee took a lot of wickets in not many ODI games. Incredible strike rate. I would say they're very, very similar. So in that way, that also helps McGrath, right? So he would have had Brett Lee in 03 and 07. In 99, he had Fleming and Rifle. So you got one guy hooping around, another guy seaming it. I suppose Fleming more of a wicket-taking bowler, Rifle more of a defensive bowler. Stark had Cummins, probably had Jimmy Faulkner. Who do you have? In 2019, he had Cummins again. Who was the third seamer in 2019? I have now forgotten that off the top of my head. But I think with strike bowlers kind of strike anyway. So I think that Shami and Lee and Tate and Shaheen, I'm trying to think of some of the others, Waqar Younis, they're kind of bowling a ball for a wicket. So it isn't really that you're getting an explosion because of the pressure that is being built up. In a way that if Paul Rifle and Glenn McGrath are bowling together, or Alan Donald and Sean Pollock, or Kirtley and Courtney, or Joel Garner and anyone, I think in those particular situations you have a build-up of pressure that might bring about some wickets. Whereas strike bowlers like Waqar, Shoaib, Stark, Shami, those sorts of guys, they are just hunting wickets all the time. And, there's always a chance they're just going to squeeze one through you or anything else. So I think it's a little bit different. I hope I answered that for you, Ari Hunt. Biggie, yeah, says, do you think Afghanistan should have gone harder in the chase as the semi-final chances are likely to come down to net run rate? Yeah, I didn't put this in a show because I saw your comment and I was about to rush and put it in the notes, but I already had this ready to go. Yeah, I do think it's a mistake. I think that it is Jonathan Trott's fault. I know you've put it in the hashtag. Sorry, Trotty. But no, I do think they've decided to go down this route. I think if you talk to Trotty or you talk to, any of the senior players from Afghanistan, they would say, look, we've never been this good at chasing before. We've finally found a method that is working for us. And you guys are nitpicking and saying we should go faster. And what we're really talking about then is we're looking for a perfect circle, right? And what they're saying is we've drawn a circle. It looks like a circle. Can we just accept that there is a circle here, right? And they're right and they're wrong. Because I do think once they got within 30 runs, they'd be better off losing a bunch of wickets and just absolutely going hell for leather and doing that. At a certain point, are they trying to get 4 or 5 wins, or are they trying to get into the semifinals? And those are two different things, right? And it's a bit like what I said, where they might have to use all the spinners. They kind of had to push their chips in if they win a semi-final. And the way they played in a couple of these chases felt like they've just been happy enough with the wins, which is, of course they are. This is their greatest World Cup. They've been magnificent in this tournament, right? One win in the last 2 tournaments, and then look at what they're doing now. They deserve all the credit in the world. However, they are on the cusp of a semi-final. And I think other teams would have risked it a lot more. But of course, other teams have won a lot more too. Kush says, is 4 run-outs a record in a World Cup? They could score 240 and 270 and fight it out later. I don't think it's a record of the World Cup. I didn't look it up, Kush, but I'm pretty sure that there have been 5 run-outs in a World Cup game. And I think it's in the double century season. Sadly, I can't remember what game it was, but I remember writing about a game in that World Cup that had 5 run-outs. But yes, 4's a lot. Don't forget, quite often at the death, you might get 2 or 3. So you only need 2 up the top and you'll end up with 5 run-outs. So in Test cricket, 4 would be horrendous. In one-day cricket, it's bad. But not always definitive. The reason this one is definitive is because it was, their first drop. No, it was the opener, first drop, second drop, third drop. I think I'm getting that right. Like, that is why it was disastrous. You can't have 4 run-outs in your top 5 wickets. Terrible. Anyway, they've had a great World Cup. And they haven't been batting very well. So take the win that they actually started well. Take the loss, but take the win, if you know what I mean. I've kind of already talked about that now, haven't I, Darth? But thank you for the question. I'll take a quick break in a moment, but if anyone has any last super chats or any other comments they're desperate, I can have a look at. Shafi says, should New Zealand bring Adam Milne as a replacement as he's in form and have experience of playing India? Well, they've already brought Kyle Jamieson, haven't they? Adam Milne is probably more a bowler that they want to fill that Lockie Ferguson position. And I'm not sure if you're talking about Lockie Ferguson's injury or Matt Henry. So Matt Henry has the tear, so he's out. Also, I thought he was moving pretty well for a guy with the tear. It must have been a very slight one, not a good area to injure, of course. But Adam Milne, for me, is more a Lockie Ferguson type replacement for them. I think what they wanted was a new ball replacement. So maybe Kyle Jamieson makes a little bit more sense. Having said that, I haven't looked at both their numbers or anything else. Maybe also, does Kyle Jamieson's batting help a little bit, or at least, makes them feel a little bit more confident going into some of those games? I love Adam Milne. I thought Adam Milne probably should have played in this tournament ahead of Tim Southee. I know he was injured. It's so hard actually telling when a New Zealand bowler is fit anymore or retired. Livingston says, you follow Nepal cricket. They qualified for the 2024 T20 World Cup. How come they came up so early? I mean their rise in T20 and ODIs. I did follow it. We had such a full show that I couldn't really put it in, but no, great news for them. I saw some of the associate guys tweeting about it, but I didn't get a chance to go and look at it or read anything. Nepal has been very good because cricket is a massive sport over there. And that's always a huge advantage, if you compare that to Ireland. So Scotland really is the team who should have been a test nation before Ireland, because Ireland didn't play a lot of cricket, whereas Scotland did. Whereas Ireland professionalized their cricket, and that allowed them to get a golden generation, which meant they jumped the queue. Nepal is a place where just a lot of people play cricket, and there's a real passion for it. Have a look at some of the crowds they get at some of their games. Compare that to some of the other associate nations. It's really, really impressive. Obviously, there's been some really good players that have come out of there, like Sandeep and Paris and KC and some of those other guys. But I do think there's a proper passion there. They've had some problems with their administration. They've had some problems with their finances. Pitches I've heard at times as well. Although I have never been. I was one of the associate nations I really want to. Oman and Nepal and Brazil and Thailand are sort of the 4 associate nations I'd love to go and have a look at and see what they're doing in those places. But I haven't had a chance to go over and do that yet. But look, I think it's fantastic. I think in some ways we thought that their cricket should be better than it is by now. And I know I think that's the opposite of what your question is here, Livingston. But because of the crowd support and the national support, the amount of people that have played the game, in different parts, it does feel like actually they've moved slower, but great for them. And hopefully they do well. Rake says, do batters judge singles and doubles differently based on who's at the other end? Yes. You don't really have a choice. You have to factor in if the other person can run, if they're an alert runner, if they're going to push hard and all those sorts of things. As someone who runs very hard myself, I will usually try and push the other person until it's just obvious that they can't be pushed. But, I remember I was playing a game recently and one of the dads was umpiring and his kid came out and he said he's not a very fast runner between wicket. But before I'd said anything, one of the fielders who'd been watching me goes, well, this guy's going to kill him then. And I do that, especially in English cricket. England players are so slow to recognize singles. Compared to Australia, you'll have this big fat, 50-year-old dad with the biggest beer belly of all time, just stealing singles everywhere. And in England, people just sit on their bat and you call them through and they look at you with horror that you're calling them through. It's so fascinating. Anyway, so you do have to factor that in. It's hard for you to know if the other player is backing up, but after you've run with them a little bit, you start to work that in. But my favorite story, of course, was when David Warner and Raheem Cornwall were batting together, and David Warner had to completely change the way he thought about running because you cannot run with Raheem the way that you do with other players. Obviously, he's just he's an incredible athlete. He's not an incredibly fast runner between wickets, right? And those are 2 very different things. Let's just take a quick break. I see there's a couple of super chats. If there's any more super chats that come in at the end, I will certainly get to them. But this is Jared Kimber. I'm on the Scoreboard. If this is your first time, subscribe, comment, do all the fun things, share, tell your mum, all that sort of stuff. And if you're desperate to get anything answered, super chat is the way to go.
Have you ever wondered how I watch so much cricket? I use VPNs to log into accounts from all around the world. But because before, even simple things like when something exciting would happen in a match, I would rush over to social media, and when I got there, the clips would say something along the lines of, this video is not available in your area. In fact, most of the coolest cricket stuff in the world at the moment is geo-blocked because some random board didn't sign a deal where you happen to live. If you're a hardcore cricket nerd, the only way is to have a VPN, and we suggest Surfshark. They will give you the speed of your favorite quick bowler. They're as inventive as a T20 batter after a bunch of dot balls, and they're as secure as a specialist wicketkeeper with the softest hands in the world. And guess what? The kind folks at Surfshark are going to give you a deal. Enter the promo code Kimber for an extra 3 months free at surfshark.deals/Kimber. There are probably other things that Surfshark can help you with, like data and identity theft and traceability and intrusive advertising. But for us, it is our best weapon against the evil cricket geo-block. Go to Surfshark and type my name in, KIMBER, and get 3 months free today.
Welcome back to the Scoreboard. I'm Jared Kimber. Thanks to everyone for supporting us. This is not a high intensity game, and there's so many people in the room at the moment. Again, it's when we did some of these smaller games, I think me and Muku, when we were discussing it, we're like, we might get 5 people, watching, especially on a new channel. You guys have completely come in and backed us up. So thank you so much to that. Also, Muku didn't think the new channel would work. So it's great that you're all here and proving Muku wrong, which is what it's really about. Vikas says, no questions. As always, great. And well, thank you for the super chat. As always, great analysis. I've recently realized that I get nice sleep listening to you and Bayram. Thank you again, Jared. Well, thank you. I'm happy to help in any way. I think there's this I find it very weird that you would think that my voice is an easy one to sleep to. I can see Bayram's. His is a bit more calming and soothing, at least compared to mine. I actually saw a voice therapist. I've got, because I lose my voice a lot. Me and Adam Collins, two Australian bogan commentators, losing our voice when we commentate in cricket. So I've got this weird device that looks like I'm doing drugs, but it's actually, it allows you to get the mist onto the back of your throat. But the thing, the voice therapist was really good. She trained me. She works with a lot of singers usually, occasionally stand-up comedians as well. She hadn't worked with a lot of sports commentators, and we were talking it through. And she said to me, "You speak very loud." I was like, "Yes, I do." And she said, "You don't need to speak loud because you have a very bright voice." Which apparently means that even when I speak in a normal way, people a long distance away can still hear what I'm saying. So I'm working on that, but I must have worked on it so well, Vikas, that it has allowed you to sleep. So a huge fan of that. And thank you very much for the super chat as well. And Ravi says, "Hi, Jared, love your show." I love you, Ravi. I just wanted to know where you got the data from the charts you prepare. I'm looking for this data for a couple of projects. So I can't give you that answer only because there's so many different places that we get it from. Cheyenne uses Crickmetrics quite a lot. I use Crickinfo and StatsGuru a little bit more. Different generations. We grew up on slightly different websites. We also sometimes use Crick Sheets. So if you want ball-by-ball data of international cricket and top-level T20 franchise cricket, Crick Sheets has an incredible array. I think it's cricksheet.org or cricksheets.org. I always forget that. They're really good, but also have partnerships with different people. And so I can bring across different things when I need to. Sometimes I get lots of information from people and sometimes I don't. But yeah, it's a combination of me and Cheyenne sort of try and work out if we can find something. Sometimes it's easy for him to find it and sometimes it's easy for me. But yeah, StatsGuru, if you really use StatsGuru, it is a fantastic tool. They've also got that Ask Crick Info feature part of it. I haven't really used that one myself. But that is really cool. But then we have access. What Cheyenne and I wanted to do, and hopefully we'll have this up and running by the IPL, which is a proper database where we have all of our advanced metrics running via maybe something like Cricksheet or Andrew Sampson is another good one. Sorry, Andrew Sampson is probably the best statistician in cricket. Fantastic person, and he has a package that you can buy, which is a bit like Cricksheets but really advanced from Cricksheets and everything else. But I think that's me, and that's all you guys. Thank you to Ravi and to Vikas, but really thank you to everyone who does the super chats. All the chats, super chats, comments, likes, anything else. Again, we will be back tomorrow. We've got a double header tomorrow, don't we? He says, checking his diary. We have double header tomorrow, so it'll be a big show tomorrow if you want to come in. We try and cover all 4 teams in a double header as much as we can, but New Zealand Pakistan could be one of the most fascinating games in the tournament, and I still think Australia should beat England because I've got eyes and I've been watching England, but it could be really fascinating if England actually snap back into it against Australia tomorrow. So that's it from us. Please support our sponsors and go to Surfshark and get all your different things. But certainly download Wicket. If you haven't downloaded Wicket Cricket Manager and you're watching this, I promise you 2 things. If you like this show, you're going to really love playing Wicket Cricket Manager. And secondly, just do it anyway because it's as a personal favor to me. But thanks to everyone, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
A few years ago, I had a panic attack after ESPN Cricinfo made me their global writer. I'd earned that position, but I also felt like a fraud at the time because I didn't really understand how I wrote. I understand that there was a process and gears and different styles and things, but how it all came together felt a little bit random. And so I began to panic like a golfer with a natural swing, worried one day I'd just end up with the yips. And would my career be over? So I took my writing apart piece by piece until I understood it. And then I figured out I could teach others all the mistakes I had learned. So I started an online course where I tried to make it as cheap as possible so people like me would be able to afford it. It's called Fans with Laptops, and heaps of people from around the world have used it so far, from first-time writers all the way through to professionals trying to improve. I started with a simple plan to make each writer the best they could be, and from the feedback I've received over the years, it seems like the course does that. But after COVID, my career changed. I came to YouTube, started podcasts, wrote emails, and formed a new career on my own going forward. So I now had something else to offer, the multimedia side of things, social media and everything else. Not to mention that I was building everything up as an independent. And so I added all of that to my course. So if you have ever wanted to work in sports as a writer or podcaster, making videos or anything else, Fans with Laptops is the place to start. If you think you qualify as a fan and you have a laptop and you want to work in sports,